Alright, so I have to continue the interview by myself. She had to go. But, where was I? So, in 91, I moved to America, and I landed from North Korea to LAX. I spent 5 years with my mother, traveling the world. My first language was Korean, then I learned Japanese, and then Cantonese and Mandarin, and a lot of Indian languages. And we just traveled the globe for 5 years, and then one day she looked at me and she was like, "Hey, mommy's got to go be busy, you got to stay with daddy." And I had watched my father on VHS, all of his plays, his shows. I've seen songs, speeches, interviews, so I knew my father very well. And so I landed in LAX, and I knew who he was immediately, and we got in the car and we headed down to Watts, and then he was like, "All right, hop out the car." And so I hop out the car, and there's a whole bunch of guys in white beaters and no shirt, and they're lifting weights, listening to music, shooting dice, playing spades, throwing a football, just regular nigga shit. And I get to the yard, and 5 dudes surround me, and there was no talking. It was just like I knew they wanted to kill me. And so previously I had grown up in a lot of Shaolin temples, and so I knew a lot of martial arts. I knew a lot about self-defense. I'd been attacked with sword, spear, bow and arrow, knuckles, nunchucks, pretty much everything that you can imagine. I fought on every stage in Asia. It did not help. Did not help at all. Got my ass beat, and I barely made it out the circle, but I made it out the circle, and I was alive, and that was my introduction to America, Grape Street, Watts. And we got back in the car, and we drove to Beverly Hills, and he was like, "Hey, this is your house." And so I lived in Beverly Hills from like pretty much 91 to 96. I did a lot of traveling in America because my father was a recording artist and a movie star, so I did a lot of recording. I met a lot of people. Yeah, so my great-grandfather's from Buffalo, my grandfather's from Buffalo, and my father's from Harlem, my mother's from everywhere in New York. Yeah, and so my ethnicity is 100% Cherokee. I don't know how far the Cherokee goes back. Obviously, it has to end at some time. You know, we were somewhere else in the world, a whole different language and everything like that. But as far as pretty much like the last 1,000 years, I can guarantee you that I'm Cherokee. And somehow, and it's super duper crazy, because the Jews travel everywhere. They're traveling people. They've always been nomadic, and apparently they found my people. So not all Cherokee people have been exposed to the Jews. So Columbus was not the first person to discover America. Lots of cultures found us. It was just Europe didn't know about it. And so the Jewish people actually found us, and they convinced us about the God that they have been serving for so many thousands of ages. And they definitely converted us, and we became Jewish. So I'm a Cherokee Indian Jew. Yeah, I was born with red hair, green eyes. My hair used to be straight and wavy before my father permed it. Yeah, my interests. I'm interested in a whole bunch of things. I don't just have one interest. But definitely music, for sure. I've been doing music since the 80s, the late 80s. My mother was a musician. She was a singer. And that was the only English that she ever spoke to me. Other than that, we spoke in the native language, and she knew them all. She was highly intelligent, very gorgeous, loved by everybody that ever met her. Opposite of me. So music, for sure, is a passion. Dancing, martial arts. I would be considered a 12th Dan. I studied martial arts for 4 years every day, meditated for the first 5 hours that I woke up with my master. So I'd probably be considered a 12th Dan black belt. What else? Computer programming, for sure, and science and mathematics. All sciences, all mathematics. And overall, just the discovering of the world and the discovering of the mind. skateboarding, cooking, learning languages, basketball, of course. Basketball is huge for me. A lot of people, it's like a hobby for them, but like for me, it's like all of life. Okay, so what is your religion? So by the time I was 2, I could read. And my first book that I had was the Bible, the Hebrew Bible, but it wasn't in Hebrew, it was in Korean. My favorite book, I only have what Americans would know as the Old Testament. I didn't have the New Testament. The only time I ever heard of Jesus was from my mother, and in her eyes, he was just another prophet of God. He was not a Messiah. There was no talk of a triune nature of God. There was no Son. There was no Holy Spirit. God was clearly and evidently one who had made a covenant with people that he loved for whatever reason, and Jesus was just another man. And to me, I was taught that in Hebrew, Messiah meant anointed. And just like when the prophet Samuel anointed King David, it just meant that you were the Messiah, the king in that time. And so when I was reading the New Testament and I got to America and I started reading the New Testament for the first time, I just saw a man that was supposed to be the true king of Israel. Apparently Herod was not the true king and his son was not the true king. And so what I saw was a whole bunch of his friends like, hey man, you're the true king, you have the genealogy, here's your genealogy, you know your genealogy, you grew up in the temple, you're a rabbi, why don't you, in the suffering in Israel, because we're occupied by the Romans and we're crushed by the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and you know, we're going through all of this turmoil and you're full of so much power and so much faith, why don't you become king? And so that's pretty much what it was. But I've graduated from Christianity a long time ago. Judaism, it will always be a part of me. But I love Taoism for sure. I love Sikhism. Yeah, those are the 2 religions that I prescribe to for sure. What does love mean to me? Love doesn't mean much anymore to the world. I've lived my life trying to love people. The minute that I've found Jesus' teachings, I try to live by his teachings, and it's impossible. Can't live that way. You'll die very early, a very early death. You'll be very stressed. You'll be very self-conscious. You won't have any confidence. I've struggled with all of these things. And it's no knock on Jesus, but maybe it worked in that time. Maybe people were just different. But, you know, if you try to follow those teachings through and through, you're going to come against a lot of hard times. And so for me, the definition of love has remained the same, but how it actually operates is very much different, man. And I'm kind of through with love. To be honest, love gets you in situations that are very compromising, very dangerous, and I think love is very misused, and I think it's very misunderstood, and I don't think there's enough of it, and I honestly don't have the confidence to spread it. Scared. What is my happiest memory? My happiest memory hasn't happened yet. I'm only 32 years old. I've had a lot of amazing memories, especially with my father. He was my favorite person. I looked up to him more than anybody in the world. Nobody can convince me that he isn't the greatest man to ever live. How do you want to leave the world? I want to leave the world with information that is useful. Forever. Timeless. Something that cannot be used to hurt, harm, destroy, distract, defeat, delude, decimate. It can only be used to give light, to comfort, to heal, to transform, to create a chain effect of positivity that ignites the atomic composition of every human that it comes into contact with. Because most of the talented people in the world today use their talents and their intelligence and their ability and their suave or whatever that they have to create the best life for themselves. And this earth is not something that I'm impressed by. It's not something that I need. It's not something that I long for. I'm more concerned with the people, and I'm more concerned with those that will come after. I'm not concerned with money. I'm not concerned with power. I'm not concerned with influence. I'm not concerned with control. I'm not concerned with fame. Concerned with talking and experiencing the lives of real people that are awoke and that are motivated and that have a sense of purpose and enjoy themselves and have interests and are trying to do everything in their power to be the best versions of themselves every second of every day, no matter what it takes. What is the greatest piece of advice you can give? And this is the last question. The greatest piece of advice that I can give to anybody is you're never done. Who you are is never complete. Your work is never complete. Your mission is never complete. Your destiny and your fate rest in your hands, delivered to you from your ancestors and from those that they created bonds with and created war with. Because it seems as if the world has become disconnected from the past in a way that is very scary. We don't understand the past. We don't know the past. And the things that we do know about the past, we try to change. And we're constantly trying to get into the future. We want to know what's next, instead of what's now. And we don't understand that the future doesn't exist and that it's simply an abstract concept to help us understand the importance of the present. That everything that we do in this very second goes to be the future. And the future itself is actually and will always be the past. The only thing that truly exists is the present, and people hate it. They hate living in the present. They either want to remember or they want to be a part of what isn't. Because what is too hard and too scary, because we've become so de-evolved that there's evolution and there's de-evolution. And humans have de-evolved through the ages. Starting probably since the turn of the millennia, to where we entered what is now the common era. So for the last 2,000 years, we have just been de-evolving, biologically, psychologically, behaviorally, and now we're at a point where everybody is confused and everybody is running around lost. And those that do know something about what's going on refuse to enlighten anybody else or show anybody else the way. And it's like we're stuck in these like cliques that we have, whether it be our brothers and sisters, mother and father, auntie and uncles, or a select group of those people, or people that we've met across our life. And we refuse to get out of our seashell or our shell, whether it be a turtle shell or a crab shell or whatever, get from under our rock and figure out what's actually going around us every day, because every day is different. So yeah, that would be my piece of advice. I hope this interview, the short interview, was insightful. I hope it inspired. I hope it created within you a determination that wasn't there. And I hope that you will only do the things that make you truly happy and make you better. Peace.